Greenland is no longer just a distant land of ice and silence. Once seen as an isolated Arctic frontier, it has quietly moved to the center of global attention. Climate change is melting centuries-old ice, exposing land, sea routes, and resources that the modern world desperately needs. At the same time, geopolitical tensions are rising, supply chains are under strain, and Europe is rethinking its security and energy future. In this shifting global order, Greenland is no longer a frozen backdrop. It is a strategic prize. Understanding why this vast island matters now is key to understanding what comes next for Europe and the world. Greenland's location, the Arctic crossroads of power. Greenland's importance begins with geography, and geography alone explains why the world is paying attention. Sitting between North America and Europe, Greenland occupies a position that is both remote and irreplaceable. It lies at the heart of the Arctic, bridging the Atlantic and the Arctic Oceans, and forming a natural gateway between continents. Although politically tied to Denmark and Europe for over 1,000 years, Greenland physically belongs to the North American landmass, sharing a narrow land border with Canada. This dual identity, European governance, North American geography, makes Greenland unique in global strategic thinking. As Arctic ice melts at unprecedented rates, Greenland's location is gaining new meaning. Routes that were once locked under ice for most of the year are becoming navigable for longer periods. Arctic shipping lanes could drastically shorten travel times between Europe and Asia, reducing dependence on choke points like the Suez Canal. For Europe, this represents both opportunity and risk. Opportunity in faster trade routes, and risk in intensified competition with global powers seeking control or influence over Arctic access. Greenland also sits near the Guyuk Gap. Greenland, Iceland, and the United Kingdom, a strategically critical corridor used for monitoring naval movement between the Arctic and the North Atlantic. During the Cold War, this area was central to NATO's defense strategy, and today its relevance is returning. Submarine activity, missile detection, and early warning systems all rely on Greenland's position. For Europe, particularly NATO members, Greenland acts as a northern shield, quiet, vast, and essential. From a climate perspective, Greenland's ice sheet is not just local geography, it is a planetary system. Changes here directly affect global sea levels and weather patterns across Europe. Melting ice alters ocean currents that influence European climates, agriculture, and coastal stability. What happens in Greenland does not stay in Greenland. It ripples outward, touching cities thousands of kilometers away. This convergence of trade, defense, and climate makes Greenland more than a territory on a map. It is a pressure point where environmental change meets geopolitical ambition. For Europe, ignoring Greenland is no longer an option. Its location alone ensures that every major global shift, economic, military, or environmental, will pass through this Arctic crossroads. Part 2, Greenland's economy. From icebound isolation to resource powerhouse. For decades, Greenland's economy was defined by limitation. Harsh climate, extreme isolation, and a lack of infrastructure meant the island relied heavily on fishing and subsidies from Denmark. Even today, seafood, especially fish and shrimp, remains the backbone of Greenland's economy, carefully regulated by quotas to prevent overexploitation. Almost everything else is imported. This fragile economic model long reinforced the image of Greenland as dependent and peripheral. But that image is rapidly becoming outdated. What is changing everything is what lies beneath the ice. As global temperatures rise and ice sheets retreat, Greenland is revealing vast deposits of rare earth elements, cobalt, graphite, and other critical minerals. These are not ordinary commodities. They are the raw materials that power modern civilization. Electric vehicles, wind turbines, solar panels, semiconductors, advanced weapon systems, and communication technologies. For Europe, which currently depends heavily on external suppliers, especially China, for rare earths, Greenland represents a potential strategic lifeline. Estimates suggest Greenland may hold tens of billions of tons of mineral resources, including a significant share of materials classified by the European Union as critical raw materials. In an era of supply chain shocks, trade wars, and sanctions, access to politically stable and geographically closer sources is becoming a priority for Europe. Greenland, under Danish and EU-aligned governance, offers something few other regions can: resource potential without immediate geopolitical hostility. However, economic opportunity comes with complex trade-offs. Mining in Greenland is expensive, technically challenging, and environmentally controversial. Infrastructure is minimal, labor costs are high, and the Arctic ecosystem is extremely fragile. For local communities, there is deep concern that rapid resource extraction could damage fishing grounds, disrupt traditional ways of life, and lock Greenland into another form of dependency, this time on multinational mining interests. Yet economic pressure is mounting. Greenland's leaders increasingly see resource development as a pathway toward greater financial independence from Denmark. For Europe, this creates a delicate balancing act, supporting responsible development while avoiding the perception of exploitation. Investments, technology transfer, and strict environmental standards are becoming central to European engagement with Greenland's economic future. The global competition for these resources is already underway. Interest from non-European actors has raised alarms in Brussels and Copenhagen alike. Control over rare earth supply chains is no longer just an economic issue. It is a strategic one. Whoever helps shape Greenland's resource economy today may shape Europe's technological and industrial security for decades to come. Greenland's economy is still small, but its potential impact is enormous. As ice gives way to opportunity, the island is transitioning from an overlooked periphery to a key node in the global economic system. The question for Europe is not whether Greenland matters economically, but whether it can engage early, responsibly, and strategically enough to shape the outcome. Politics and sovereignty. Greenland between autonomy and global pressure. Greenland's political significance cannot be separated from its evolving relationship with Denmark and the growing interest of global powers. Officially, Greenland is a self-governing territory within the Kingdom of Denmark. It controls most domestic affairs, including natural resources, while Copenhagen retains authority over defense, foreign policy, and monetary matters. This arrangement has long been stable, but it is now under increasing strain as Greenland's strategic value rises. For many Greenlanders, the long-term political goal is greater autonomy, and for some, full independence. Economic dependence on Denmark, through annual subsidies, has been one of the main obstacles to that ambition. As mineral wealth and global investment interests grow, so too does the belief that Greenland could one day stand on its own financially. This political aspiration is closely watched by Europe because any shift in Greenland's status would have immediate consequences for EU influence in the Arctic. Denmark has been clear on one point: Greenland is not for sale. Modern international law prohibits the transfer of territory without the consent of its people, and Greenlandic society has repeatedly rejected the idea that sovereignty could be traded for money or strategic favors. Public reactions to past suggestions of buying Greenland revealed something deeper than political outrage. They showed a strong sense of identity and self-determination among a population often underestimated by outside observers. At the same time, Greenland is increasingly exposed to global pressure. As interest from major powers grows, so does competition for influence through investment, infrastructure projects, and scientific cooperation. This puts Greenlandic leaders in a difficult position. They must balance economic development with political autonomy and international partnerships with local control. For Europe, especially the EU and NATO members, this is a sensitive space. Overreach could fuel anti-European sentiment, while disengagement could leave room for rival powers to step in. Greenland also plays a quiet but important role in Arctic governance. It is part of broader regional frameworks that regulate fishing, environmental protection, and scientific cooperation. And as the Arctic becomes more accessible, these rules are being tested. Political stability in Greenland is therefore not just a local issue. It underpins Europe's broader vision of a rules-based Arctic order. What makes Greenland's political situation particularly delicate is its small population. With just tens of thousands of residents spread across a vast territory, political decisions carry outsized consequences. A single large investment, a single foreign partnership, or a single policy shift can reshape the island's future. This amplifies the importance of transparency and local consent, values Europe claims to champion. Greenland today stands at a political crossroads. Its choices will determine not only its own future, but also Europe's position in the Arctic. Whether Greenland moves gradually toward greater autonomy or remains closely tied to Denmark, one reality is clear: the era of political invisibility is over. Part 4. Science and Climate. Greenland as the world's early warning system. Beyond politics and economics, Greenland holds a role that may ultimately be even more consequential. It is one of the world's most important scientific front lines. Nowhere else on Earth illustrates the reality of climate change as starkly or as visibly. Greenland's ice sheet, one of the largest reservoirs of fresh water on the planet, has become a living record of past climates and a warning signal for the future. For scientists in Europe and around the world, what happens here is not theoretical. It is measurable, accelerating, and deeply alarming. For decades, Greenland was considered remote and static, its vast ice shield seemingly permanent. That assumption has collapsed. Rising global temperatures are causing the ice sheet to melt faster than previously predicted, contributing directly to global sea level rise. For Europe, this is not an abstract concern. Coastal cities, low-lying countries, ports, and infrastructure across the continent face increasing risks from flooding, erosion, and storm surges. Data collected in Greenland feeds directly into European climate models, disaster planning, and long-term policy decisions. Greenland has effectively become a natural laboratory. Scientists study the interaction between ice, ocean, currents, and the atmosphere in real time. Meltwater flowing into the North Atlantic can disrupt major ocean circulation systems, including currents that help regulate Europe's climate. Even small changes in these systems could lead to colder winters, hotter summers, or more extreme weather events across the continent. Greenland's ice, therefore, is not just melting, it is reshaping Europe's future climate stability. Research stations scattered across Greenland host international teams, many funded or supported by European institutions. These scientific partnerships are one of Europe's strongest, least controversial footholds on the island. Unlike military or mining interests, science enjoys broad public support locally because it brings education, employment, and global relevance without immediate environmental destruction. Yet even this comes with pressure. As access improves, research activity increases, raising concerns about sustainability and respect for local communities. Greenland's scientific value also extends beyond climate. Ice cores drilled deep into the ice sheet preserve atmospheric samples stretching back hundreds of thousands of years. These frozen archives allow scientists to understand how Earth responded to past warming events and how quickly change can spiral beyond human control. For policymakers in Europe, these findings are increasingly hard to ignore. They translate directly into debates over energy policy, emissions targets, and economic transformation. In this sense, Greenland functions as the world's early warning system. What scientists observe here today, Europe may experience tomorrow. Ignoring Greenland's scientific signals would mean ignoring the clearest evidence of planetary change available. As climate politics grow more polarized, Greenland's data stands as a neutral but unforgiving witness. The island's role in science reinforces a critical truth. Greenland is not only valuable for what it might give the world in resources or strategy, but for what it already reveals. Its melting ice is a message, and Europe, more than most, cannot afford to look away. Military and security. Greenland's quiet role in Europe's defense. Greenland's military importance is rarely visible, but it is profound. Beneath its vast skies and frozen landscapes lies a critical component of European and transatlantic security. During the Cold War, Greenland was a frontline outpost, hosting early warning radar systems designed to detect incoming missiles across the Arctic. That strategic logic never disappeared. It merely faded from public view. Today, it is returning with urgency. Greenland's position places it at the center of Arctic air and sea corridors. As ice retreats, military mobility in the region increases, making surveillance and control more important than ever. The island sits along the routes used by submarines and long-range aircraft moving between the Arctic and the North Atlantic. For NATO, and particularly for Europe, Greenland is part of the northern shield that protects the continent from emerging threats. The presence of military infrastructure, coordinated primarily through Denmark and its allies, reinforces Greenland's role in missile defense and early warning systems. These capabilities are not aimed at conflict, but at deterrence and stability. In a world of growing strategic uncertainty, the ability to detect, monitor, and respond early is invaluable. For Europe, this contributes directly to collective security, especially as attention shifts back to high-intensity conflict scenarios. However, military significance also brings sensitivity. Greenlandic society remains cautious about becoming overly militarized. Memories of past environmental damage and limited local consultation have left lasting concerns. Any expansion of military activity must now navigate a landscape shaped by demands for transparency, environmental protection, and respect for local authority. Europe's challenge is to strengthen security without undermining the trust of the people who live there. Security in Greenland is no longer just about traditional defense. It intersects with cyber infrastructure, satellite monitoring, and space-based systems that rely on Arctic positioning. These technologies support navigation, communications, and intelligence across Europe. As reliance on digital and space assets grows, Greenland's role in protecting these systems becomes even more significant. In this broader context, Greenland is not a military base. It is a strategic platform. Its value lies in stability, cooperation, and integration within existing alliances. For Europe, maintaining Greenland as a secure, cooperative space is essential to preserving peace in the Arctic. Militarization without diplomacy would increase risk, not reduce it. Greenland's quiet military role underscores a larger reality. Security in the 21st century is no longer confined to borders or battlefields. It is shaped by geography, climate, technology, and trust. Greenland sits at the intersection of all four, making it an indispensable, if often overlooked, pillar of Europe's defense. Greenland's transformation is already underway. What was once a frozen edge of the map is now a focal point of global change. Its location, resources, politics, science, and security all converge to shape Europe's future in ways that can no longer be ignored. The choices made today by Greenlanders, by Europe, and by the wider world will determine whether this transformation leads to cooperation or conflict, sustainability or exploitation. Greenland is not just a strategic asset, it is a test of how the world responds to change. The question now is simple: how should Greenland's future be shaped, and who should have the final say?